I'm Kelly Teixeira. I'm part of the board of directors of ASUG Brazil, and currently I'm General Manager of Technology Project at ArcelorMittal Sistemas. And today we are in the 27th Annual Conference of ASUG Brazil, and we have a pleasure to have here with us Daniel Becker, that's the Global VP of Adoption and Experience of SAP, coming directly from Germany to be part of this annual conference. Hello, Daniel. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here in Sao Paulo. It's actually my very first time in Brazil, so I'm already very hyped up through all of the positive vibes we saw earlier and looking forward to this interview with you.
Thank you very much, and we expect that's the first of many. Okay?
Yeah, hopefully. Let's see. Actually, I do have some vacation coming up after the business travels, and I hope I enjoy it, and then I'm going to come back next year, so depending on that, of course.
Oh, for sure. It will be a pleasure to have you here. And let's start our conversation. As Daniel is head of global adoption, and all of us, we are talking about how to go to the cloud, what would be the journey to the cloud. Daniel, could you talk to us, what do you think is the biggest misconception companies have when they first start down this path?
Yes, of course, and that's a topic which resonates with every customer across the globe, obviously. And also today in the keynote, we heard about our journey towards the business suite in the cloud, so SAP's business suite in the cloud. And of course, the word already tells it, it's a journey. That means customers should definitely not consider this as a one-time project. That's for sure not the case. But of course, it's a continuous evolution to get there, right? Even when you are live with the business suite in the cloud, of course, it requires constant monitoring to check step by step, are we still on the right track? Can we course correct certain elements? So that is one of the things I would recommend. And the second one I would recommend is to do this jointly with business and IT, right? In the end, adoption of the business suite is a team sport.
Yes.
Think of it like a soccer squad, right? It's a team sport where everyone contributes. And also here we need to make sure that IT is very tightly collaborating with the business counterparts to get the most out of the value on their journey towards the SAP Business Cloud.
Yes, indeed. It's really a journey that needs to be created and to be traveled together, the business and the IT, for sure. And could you start by defining what a true actionable insight looks like as opposed to just data point or statistic when it comes to the journey to the cloud? Because it's not going to the cloud. What would be the benefits coming to the cloud? And when it comes to the data associated to that, what would be the new insights that the company can get through that, or the game changer, actually?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot about this flywheel, right, of SAP's Business Suite in the cloud, where we talk about the apps on the BTP as foundation, then the data with the Business Data Cloud, and then the AI on top. I think what is most important to customers is they leverage all the opportunities of the Business Suite in the cloud, right? That means making sure they use the applications they need to run their business. And based on this, of course, we create certain data. And then you can also harmonize SAP data, but also add non-SAP data in order to then apply AI on top as a lever of value going in the future. And I think what is important about the Business Suite and about the benefits there, if you think about cloud, it means that of course, SAP runs the system on behalf of you. I mean, that is kind of our role as a cloud vendor. But secondly, due to the innovation cycles, they are way shorter than compared to on-premise, right? So for instance, in the Grow with SAP, we have twice a year an upgrade where we deliver new features, new functions, perhaps also new user experience and better performance. And hence, once you are in the Business Suite in the cloud, you benefit from those upgrades where you get innovations delivered step by step, and you do not have to wait for another system upgrade for taking over for years, but you directly can consume those innovations from the Business Suite. And in my role, right, I try to be as data-driven as possible, and the same we also advise for customers, right? And that is why we also share with them certain self-steering insights, so they actually know how the licenses they bought being utilized, what kind of features and functions the customer has with the Business Suite are being used and adopted by end users. And you can actually tell a lot of customers also in B2B, unfortunately, the adoption of features in the SaaS and enterprise industry is still lacking, right? Actually, there is a study from 5 years ago, roughly, which says that 80% of features in B2B SaaS areas are not used or rarely used, right? And just think about the huge potential if we only adopt some of them even more. I think then the value of that business suite in total comes even more into play.
Yes, it's a very good point when it comes to adoption. How can SAP help us to improve the adoption? Because I really see, mainly in Brazil, but I think it's worldwide, that people are still lacking. When you talk about BTP, this Business Technology Platform, we know that there is really a platform with several products inside that. But how to use, how to potentialize, and then also comes keep the core clean, because as you mentioned, you have the upgrades. Once you are in the cloud, you have the upgrades in order to keep up with the innovation and everything. But in order to have it, you need to be more standardized. And how we can keep the core clean, this concept, educate everybody on this aspect, and also has more knowledge about the BTP. How do you think that SAP can help us to improve the adoption on this sense?
Yes, so I mean, obviously this is a very broad topic, right? And I think we're going to tackle this from various angles. So the first one is, of course, about enablement, and that is, by the way, also why I'm here to speak about some of the stuff. We invest into a lot of things like community building, knowledge sharing, transfer sessions like this with the user groups across the world, with partner communities. So that is for sure one thing we offer. Then secondly, of course, also within the solutions, what we try is to make it way easier for our end users to actually adopt the solution fully, right? So if you think about WalkMe, which is a perfect example on how can our solutions benefit from WalkMe if we ease the use of our solutions for our end users. So that is also something we are investing into. And then thirdly, and that is something I'm responsible for, we invest into self-steering, self-service cockpits, right? Where customers see on the fly in the cloud in real time what they are using, what their users are using, also what is the feedback their users are giving. And those are data, of course, we collect in an anonymized way to improve our products, but also we share this back with the customers so they can get active. And to that sense, it's a broad variety of things we are driving to make sure the adoption goes up. But in the end, what is most important, and that is something we see from customers across the world, is that, again, it's team sport between the customer's line of businesses and the IT, right? This, in the end, determines the success of the overall project, because only if we are tightly interconnected and know exactly what is the demand of the business, then, of course, IT, both as a corporate function, but as well as a software provider, we can help you along this. And what I always see in successful projects, that companies start defining the definition of what is good, right? So where do they want to get started with the business suite? Is there certain domains such as finance, sales, service, or asset management where they want to get started with, and then basically start from there? So this is the whole idea of defining the scope from the get-go, and then gradually, step by step, ensure that you adopt the solutions. And this is for sure something where not only my team, but SAP overall, of course, will support big times, because in the end, only happy customers are customers who use the solution and who also experience the solution in the right way.
I totally agree. And when they really understand the benefits and they see the benefits and the outcomes to the business, actually, they don't consider that expensive anymore, right? Because they see the benefits. Otherwise, they consider it as only a cost, an additional
absolutely.
cost.
So in my point of view, right, the whole move to SAP's Business Cloud, yes, of course, there are always certain cost aspects associated with that. Yes, that is clear. Sure. Same holds true for the technology roadmap of your customer. But in the end, it's about the business value, right? And that is actually something which SAP is now taking even a further step on with Business Data Cloud, with AI infused in the applications, so the customers and the users really get the business value from this. And that's why I was saying earlier, it's important to keep in mind, why is it that we are now going into an SAP Business Cloud project, either with Rise with SAP or Grow with SAP? What are the business goals I'm following? And I have one very easy example which I share, because before that role, I worked in finance for quite some while, right? So what we see also is take the example of a customer who wants to optimize their cash flow, which is a regular thing every customer wants to do these days. So you want to optimize your cash flow, right? The question is, how can you influence your cash flow? And one of the aspects is to reduce your day sales outstanding, obviously. And this is kind of the value aspect. Now, if SAP comes in with the software, we actually have a lot of features and functionalities in that space. So for instance, in accounts receivable, we have certain AI functionalities. Now the question is, are our users really adopting the accounts receivable? Because if not, obviously the customer are not using our software in that area, but then they will also, as a ripple effect, not be able to reduce their day sales outstanding and will not be able to optimize the cash flow, right? And to put it vice versa, what we see is the more and also the more intense you adopt SAP's capabilities in the respective business domains, the higher the likelihood that your business process KPIs and then ultimately your business values and drivers get better over time.
Yes, it's very important. And also in this sense, the company and the end users, they need to have the willingness also to change the process, to adapt to the process, right? How SAP is monitoring this? Do you have a strategy to be closer to the customers, or you are counting more on the partners? Because at the end, it will affect the adoption of SAP new products, and also the return on the value, the return on the investment for the customers. And sometimes the customer can think of that, SAP is promising something, it was a very aggressive roadmap, but at the end, I'm not seeing any value to the business. How do you think that SAP or the partners can work closely to the customers in order to show really the benefits of that? That's not only one more product, only more costs involved, but also benefits to bring value to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. It's in the end all about the business value, and that is what we see as best practice across all of the ERP transformations. Again, be it Rise with SAP or Grow with SAP, that you have to start from the business goals, right? So what is the outcome, the business outcome by domain you want to get out of the ERP? Because this is like the North Star, right?
Yes.
Everything else, that means scoping, implementation, adoption of user, right, goes into that direction. So both partners and SAP, of course, we do this jointly, would need to help customers understand how can they size and how can they somewhat get a feeling of what is the business outcome they want to see. So it starts with this one, actually, right? And then, of course, we have certain ripple down effects. For instance, one element, and you mentioned the business process efficiencies, is our SAP tool chain, where we combine certain solutions such as WalkMe, LeanIX, Calm, but also SAP Signavio. And SAP Signavio is a great starting point because it gives you an assessment of the most critical business process performance indicators. Where are you at? Potentially also where are you at in combination to your industry peers and to a peer group, so you know actually what is good and what is not good. And you can then start from there on, working backwards. What are the components in my ERP, again, in finance, sales, service, asset management, where I want to get started with? So I would only recommend to get started by actively embracing SAP's tool chain, which is also integrated in the Rise with SAP offer, for instance, to make sure you start from the business outcomes first.
Yes, for sure. And do you see I really believe in everything that you are saying, for sure. But I really think that there is really having a lack of awareness in the marketing, the customers, because like you mentioned, WalkMe, Calm, and also there are, when we talk to some people, there are still some questions, some doubts really about the Rise, the Grow. I really think that we together, and ASUG is part of this ecosystem.
Yes, absolutely.
We need to work more on education in order to clarify everything that SAP already has available for we use, that can potentialize the benefits to the business, and also bring more knowledge on what would be the path to achieve that, to go to the journey.
Yeah, I think it's a combination out of SAP, of course, customer and clients. in the end, we have the same goal of making that project or the customer successfully on the long run.
Yes.
So that, of course, means we are working on enablement, and I see the role of the user groups here as a super important one to spread that message on the one hand in terms of enablement material, but also the things we just talked about, right? Also in terms of a methodology, how do you approach a rise with SAP or grow with SAP journey? Because SAP, we have a lot of accelerators and a lot of best practices from our vast experience in the industry across all markets. So there are certainly things to get started with right away. And on the other hand, I also see the user groups as an important feedback channel for us, right?
Yes.
To tell back to SAP what is working well, what is not so working well, where do we perhaps need to invest. So that in itself is already a big enablement and education plan. I think in general, right, on the business suite in the cloud, it's again about all of those value and business use cases. And of course, we do sessions such as this to drive the enablement. And of course, we're also going to make sure we introduce certain other components where this can be shared, such as partner enablements, such as SAP communities, such as product success councils. I mean, councils in general always help to spread the word. But of course, the best thing is when you start a project that you embrace this, right? Because for me, starting a new ERP project always means having a big opportunity to rethink processes, to rethink how things are done in your company. And of course, from the get-go, of course, depending on the customer and industry, SAP is also there to support with adoption services and help you embrace this from the very first moment on.
Yes, for sure. It also needs to have an open mindset, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, in order to really sometimes to rebuild everything, but for a good reason, in order to bring more value to the business. And everything that you are saying is really promising. Really, SAP has a lot of tools, methodology, and everything in order to help us. But let's come to Brazil scenario. We have in Brazil very big companies, but you have also medium-sized companies. How do you think that SAP fits on this market? Mm-hmm. How could be affordable for these business units that are very important for the ecosystem in Brazil for sure, but they are not a big international company that can afford a very big investment. Mm-hmm. How do you think that SAP can help on that?
Yeah, so the beauty about SAP Business Suite in the cloud, and again here be it Rise or Grow with SAP, is of course it fits more or less customers of any size. Of course, it depends on what is your goal, and it doesn't need to be always like a full-fledged ERP migration project. It can also be about starting gradually, step by step, function by function, and that is exactly the reason why also at Sapphire we announced in the Grow with SAP journey new packages such as Finance Base, Finance Premium, SCM Base, SCM Premium, to really attract also those mid-sized companies in the Brazil region, for instance, to get started with it function by function. In addition, all of the services, methodology, and even most of those tools I talked about, such as SAP for Me or the BTP cockpit, where you can have like a self-steering cockpit, they're actually free of charge, right? So it doesn't really matter if you are a big-sized company, if you are a small-sized or medium-sized company. Those tools and the methodology along the best practices, that is something which is available. But by the way, of course, also in our partner ecosystem who can also help you along this. So that actually isn't any hurdle holding you back, even if you are a mid-sized company. I mean, what I see in Brazil in general, of course, we have a very strong partner ecosystem there, which are also perfectly educated to help those smaller customers move to the SAP Business Suite in the cloud step by step. And what I also see is that companies in Brazil, again, do not tend to have a full-fledged ERP transformation project, but gradually start step by step. And I think for them, something like Grow with SAP, of course, depending on the industry you're in, is a perfect fit, because here it's in the choice of the customer in which area they want to get started and with which line of business they want to go first into the business suite in the cloud. So to that extent, I see this as a huge advantage. And also what I hear when I listen into the Brazil market unit, the market overall, is that, of course, Brazilian customers appreciate that local flavor, right? And of course, also with the localization features and the tools from SAP and partners, that is for sure something we can accompany towards, and for sure something where we can help those customers also in the mid-enterprise segment to scale for the business suite in the cloud.
And if it's like a green field, right, Grow can help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, again, totally depends on the starting point of that
Yes,
customer. The good thing
yes.
is there is no right or wrong. It really
Okay,
depends
on
on the customer. And of course, we have our North Star, which is SAP's business suite in the cloud. But we have the Rise with SAP journey. We have the Grow with SAP journey.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Grow with SAP, we tend to see more greenfield approaches,
Yeah.
which is, as I told you earlier, a huge opportunity in my eyes to really rethink processes, to perhaps also cut off certain legacy processes which didn't make any sense. And the biggest advantage for me in Grow with SAP is that whole thinking about standardization and best practices, right? And that is something I can only recommend every customer to think about in my whole value chain of my company. What are elements where I can differentiate via standardization, which I simply put on the best practices and the benchmarking in the industry, and what are elements where I want to differentiate by really specific, compelling features, services,
yes.
right? And once you do this, and then again for the parts which is highly standardized, highly mass market relevant in functions such as perhaps finance and others, that is for sure something where you get the benefit from the business suite in the cloud in Grow from the first moment onwards.
Yes, and also getting the benefit from Joule, right? Because it's already inside embedded.
That is even coming on top,
Yeah.
right? And again, on that flywheel, I think it's a beautiful combination out of apps which you're using for your enterprise users, and those apps generate data. Of course, we need to harmonize the data also with SAP and non-SAP data, and then we can apply AI on top. And AI can mean, on the one hand, AI infused into our applications to make it for the user in the specific domain easier. But of course, it can also be Joule or all of the other agents we have released. Yeah? Last week, I was at the SAP Connect event in Las Vegas, and we released another set of AI agents which help the users orchestrate workflows even across line of business boundaries. That means now if you work in finance and you have an agent for accounts receivable or whatever other function in finance, they can sparring partner with other agents sitting in another part of the SAP solution, so the end user can automate more and more tasks. Of course, is still in the driver's seat for the final decision. That is, of course, clear. But more of this value generation moves towards the end user, while some of the commodity things can be taken care of by the AI and AI agents.
Okay, but now comes the cost point
Yeah.
of the equation. What in this case, it's already embedded in the Grow, or is the license or the cost considered a part based on the consumption? How it is?
Yeah, so of course we have different licensing and commercial models, obviously. So Rise with SAP and Grow with SAP usually is on a subscription model. The beauty here is that it comes along a package with certain entitlements for other solutions such as AI, Business Data Cloud, even BTP. That means if you actually go for a Rise or for a Grow contract and you commercialize this, you have certain components already embedded. Now, of course, we also have a broad variety of additional AI use cases or functionality of Business Data Cloud. That is then something where you can actually go and upsell and look into different components. But here the beauty is that with tools such as the AI estimator, even the discovery cockpit, we also provide you full transparency about your service consumption, how much does it cost to you, what is the associated business value before you even implement it.
Okay.
So also here we offer tools specifically on AI, on what is the value of that and what is the cost associated with you with that. So you can then make the calculation for yourself if you think that makes sense or not. And this is where I can recommend SAP for me as a tool. I mean, SAP for me is anyways your digital companion, if you will, for a 360 degree of your collaboration with SAP, where you see the finance, the contracts, you see some of the support topics, performance topics, but you also see the usage of entitlements, right? So what are the licenses which you have bought as part of the different packages, and how is the consumption looking like? And actually, we also put certain intelligence in there. For instance, we put certain alerts in there. For instance, if you reach a point where you say, hey, I'm close to 80% consumption of my licenses, you can set a threshold, and then it gives you an alert that you're about to overconsume, so you can manage your costs thoroughly. So that is happening on the license side. In addition, we also provide clarity about functional use, right? Also here, what SAP internally tracks, we also give to you as a customer. So you actually see, is that solution capability or that feature, is that being used by my users? Yes or no? Of course, all in an anonymized way that is 100% secured. But also this gives you, once you are live, a good indication on, are you able to capture the value? Because what you then see in there is that a certain capability, let's come back to accounts receivable, if that one is not being used, but perhaps it's used by all of your peers in the industry, and it's actually one of the main goals you had for implementing ERP, that is certainly a call to action.
Yes.
And so again, via tools such as SAP for me, and there are of course way more out there, you get some self-service cockpit with data and facts at hand to become data-driven by yourself as it relates to steering SAP investments.
As you said, can bring some insights as well, right?
Yeah.
The call to action to change the process or to promote a change management with the end users.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we are a big believer of sharing those adoption data with customers and partners themselves, right? Because in the end, you need to be in the driving seat.
Yes.
And it all goes back to what I said in the beginning. As a company, you need to define your business goals, and then we want to help you achieve those business goals and capture the value. And of course, we talk about data-driven steering a lot, right? That's also my main role in SAP. But we can, of course, only do this if also the customers are empowered with the data they need at hand to steer their investments into SAP solution rightfully.
Yes. In the cloud platform, are you encouraging as well low code and no code to really give power to the end users to be more autonomous and not so dependent from IT? How is this approach?
Yeah, so on the BTP, right, we have a variety of services. By the way, also here we have the discovery cockpit where you see actually what are the services which are being used, which are not being used, how does it relate back to the licenses. And yes, also in the overall BTP, we have that capability SAP Build, which is also this no-code, low-code platform for development users or also citizen developers to go ahead and try something out. And also here we have predefined workflows, right? We have predefined templates to get started with. So I guess recommendation here is just give it a try, right?
Give it a try, use it.
Yeah,
right?
use it, adopt it, and give feedback. That is, by the way, something we also do in our public cloud portfolio. We actually also collect user feedback, right? So end users anonymously have the chance to give feedback to SAP's development team right away. How satisfied they are with the solution, how useful is it, how usable is this? And that is actually also the beauty of cloud, because that does not exist in on-premise. In the cloud, actually users can, by clicking on that push and pull feedback button, give feedback straight away to SAP on what they like and dislike. And of course, in the SAP product and engineering teams, we closely monitor what is coming in terms of feedback, right? Is the feature usable? Is it helpful? Is it satisfying the users? And if not, then of course we take counter action. So also this is a call to action, which is the beauty of the cloud, that the voice of the users and of the customers is even more crucial and even more centered in the cloud, because we can collect them in more or less real time.
Yes, really real time.
Yeah.
Yes. And you mentioned the data-driven is everywhere, and it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
True, yes. What do you think is the next evolution of this? Do you foresee something different or even more revolutionary?
Yeah, I think we are already in the midst of that transformation, right? I mean, the term becoming data-driven is now around there since years. I guess finally everyone is trying to adopt this. But if you think about the super short innovation cycles around data and AI, and again, just to come back to SAP, business data in the cloud, where you bring together from SAP and non-SAP sources, they are context-aware, they are business-aware, they are connected, that is most important, so that then AI on top can help you with recommendations and suggestions. I think we are already there in the future. So in the end, it's not about becoming data-driven. I would phrase it's becoming outcome-led, right? Because in the end, all of those data at hand, they hopefully lead from insights to actions to outcomes. And of course, that is something which we can now elevate with data, business data cloud, and also AI. And in the end, of course, the user or the decision maker in the company, that's still the role who needs then to give a call on the recommendations. But if we can use the data to come to better outcomes and be guided already with certain proposals, that is for me like the future evolution of data-driven. So I would say outcome outcome-led, outcome-driven, if you will, but of course with data as the basis for this.
Yes, the data is the foundation
Absolutely.
for everything.
Yeah, this determines the success of everything,
yes,
of your efficiency and effectiveness of AI, on how good, of course, you are achieving in your business goals. So having a clean data structure, again, combining
Yes.
SAP and non-SAP data, that is most important, because only then that flywheel effect, right, of apps lead to data, lead to AI, lead to better apps, to better data, to better AI.
Yes.
Only then this will work at scale.
Yes, and as you mentioned, using SAP data and non-SAP data as well, because we have non-SAP systems. Every company has
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And the quality of the data, then sometimes we already have, in the organizations, we already have the tool, but you cannot get the benefit from it because you don't have a good quality data.
Yeah.
And everything interconnect and everything. Then sometimes it's a challenge as well.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, obviously in every company across the globe we see that, and that is why I truly believe that the Business Data Cloud is really a compelling offering, right? Because not only does it allow you to onboard and manage SAP data, but of course also non-SAP data from various sources as you want. I mean, we of course do not like it, but sometimes there are also
Yes.
non-SAP data
Yes.
sources, that's clear.
It's the reality, right?
That's the reality, right? So of course you can connect both, and that is the one thing. And then of course, the beauty about Business Data Cloud, it comes with a certain business logic and dimension, and with predefined SAP data products, right? So that means the whole onboarding definition of data, for some of those parts can be taken over by SAP. That means that also for you as a customer or partner or even the user group, right? This helps harmonizing on that Business Data Cloud layer to speak one language in the different business departments. And that's, by the way, that's the same we do at SAP as well. Also in my role, right? I work a lot with data on usage, adoption, experience. And of course, it's for me utmost important to speak the same language with my product and engineering counterparts, with my counterparts in the field if we discuss certain adoption of customers. So of course we need to have one harmonized definition, one data lake,
Yes.
one way to interpret. Of course, the actions you derive from there always differ, because obviously different personas require different insights because they drive different jobs, that is clear. But the foundation, there is no debate about the foundation and definition of the data point itself
Yes.
anymore. And that already helps big times on moving the discussion to a more value-adding part of the business.
Yes, for sure. And the source of truth, right?
Yeah.
Because everything, all the time, the executives, they are making decisions. And they don't want to make decisions anymore, asking for their managers, the people on the floor. No, they would like to have, and you see it more and more, the dashboards, and the decision needs to be taken real time, all the time. Then needs to be based on the real data, the data that you can trust.
100%. I mean, that is the foundation of steering in all companies. And I think now with the shortened innovation cycles, and of course also with the growing complexity in our world, in the economy, also with certain tariffs put into place left and right, you need to react very quickly and rapidly. And I think the decision making is of course on the board level and the C-suite, but also more and more we see very fast and rapid decision making in the hands of users, right, or directors. And there it's even more important that they share a common understanding on the data points they're looking into and the consequences. I mean, what I also have done in my role in finance a couple of years ago, we also did certain simulation analysis, right, where we had a streamlined data model, but then also we looked into what-if scenarios. What happens if function A or B changes? What kind of ripple effects do we see on the outcome, on the profit, on the revenue, right? And if we have the same data in place, simulations like this can be made on the fly, regardless if it's the C-suite or if it's on the people who need to take the decision for the next supplier, for getting the next customer right, and for actually those sorts of user.
And to be honest, in today's world, it has never been more important, right? Because it's changing all the time. All the time, the executives need to have several scenarios to try to minimize the impacts in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Exactly that, right? That whole simulation of what-if scenarios, what happens if one input factor changes, what is the outcome? Again, coming back to outcome-led and outcome-guided, that is in the end what matters, right? And of course, the business world is very much connected on the whole supply chain and the value chain of a customer overall. So it's not as easy as point A leads to point B. It's, of course, always highly interwoven. So the question is, of course, what kind of data do we need to make that simulation as good as possible, and to then take the best possible decision at the current point in time with outcome-led in mind?
There is, before we finish here, there is some point that we would like to highlight that for everybody that's hearing us, that you would like to emphasize, that you consider the most important point that they should look at, they should give a try, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that's actually already my most important recommendation. See, there is so many technology out there and, of course, so many business challenges. So I would recommend to get started with a scope you can oversee in the beginning, right? Perhaps start in finance, start in sales or in service, right? And then try to think this through. What is ultimately the business goal I want to achieve, right? What does good and bad mean for me? Because only then you can determine with data if we are on track or off track. So the whole thing about data-driven development or data-driven steering is really about what is the business goal, what does good and bad mean, and then I can use data to check whether I'm off track or on track. And of course, that's a virtuous cycle. So my recommendation would be, just get started, of course, ideally with SAP tools, be it the self-service cockpits, be it BDC, be it AI, and search for a specific business challenge you want to solve, and then get started, right? And of course, if it's successful, you can expand from there step by step.
Yes, for sure. And what comes to my mind based on our conversation is we need to accelerate, to improve more, even more, the partnership between ASUG and SAP in order to bring more to the ecosystem. More knowledge, more about BTP, more about the rise, the growth, the opportunities, how you can really give more guidance on that and make everybody understand better what we are talking about.
Yeah, you know, and enablement is of course a huge topic, regardless of the customer, industry, of the country, of the software you are going for. So enablement is key. On the other hand, of course, if you want to sing from the private life a little bit, right? I used to play video games quite a lot in my youth, I have to say. And of course, there is always like a big construction manual alongside this, but you would never read this, right? You would just go directly to the game and start playing.
It needs to be self-explaining.
It needs to be
right?
self-explaining, and that is something which at SAP we also understand, specifically in cloud, right? Where adoption is the ultimate currency of success, right? If customers are not experiencing great products, they will not continue using, and then they will stop, they will churn, and of course the customer will not get the value from the solution. So the solution itself and the guidance for the end user needs to be as easy as possible, as self-explaining as possible, where we now invest into WalkMe as well, where we invest into reducing the hurdles of user adoptions, because only then you get the full value out of the software. And again, ideally, you don't need a manual anymore, but you can just get started with recommendations, be it by AI or WalkMe in-app enablement, to exploit the full value of the software.
Yes, fantastic, Daniel. It was really a pleasure.
Likewise.
I really hope that everyone enjoyed as much as I, because I really liked our conversation, and really hope to have you here in Brazil many more times, okay?
Yeah, absolutely likewise. It was a pleasure talking to you, Kelly, and of course, thanks for the collaboration with the user groups. I know we have quite a fantastic partnership. I even have some colleagues from my team here in Brazil locally, right, whom, of course, also are happy to support and help on tools and services. And yeah, would love to be back soon. Of course, depends on our schedule, but absolutely get the positive vibes around this event here. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. And thank you all that listen to the video cast. And as I mentioned here, I really believe that you have a huge opportunity to explore more and more what SAP has to offer. Thank you and see you next time. Bye-bye.